Tonight, somewhere in the world, someone is sitting beside a body. They don't know what to do with their hands. They don't know what to say. They just sit there. And if you've ever been in that room, you know exactly what that silence feels like. But here is what no one tells you. That silence is ancient. That stillness is older than language. And what your ancestors did when someone died would completely change how you think about grief, ritual, and what it means to be human. The story starts much earlier than you think. For a long time, the scientific consensus was simple. Early hominins didn't bury their dead. They were not complex enough. Death was just death. A body was a body. You left it behind, and you moved on. That was the assumption for decades. Then, in 2015, everything changed. Deep inside a cave system in South Africa called Rising Star, paleoanthropologist Lee Berger and his team discovered something no one expected. Hundreds of bones, deliberately placed, not scattered, not dragged there by predators, carefully arranged deep in a chamber so small that only researchers under a certain size could squeeze through to reach it. The species they found was Homo naledi, a creature with a brain roughly 1/3 the size of yours. And yet, those bones suggested intentional deposition of the dead. A creature with a tiny brain doing something that, until that moment, we thought required a fully modern one. The question stopped being whether ancient humans cared about death. The question became, how far back does that caring go? Further than you imagined. 60,000 years ago, in the Shanidar cave in what is now Iraq, a Neanderthal was buried. Researcher Ralph Selecki discovered the site in the 1950s and made a claim that rattled the scientific world. Pollen found around the body suggested flowers had been placed in the grave. Opponents pushed back. They argued rodents or wind could have carried the pollen in. The debate raged for decades. But here is what even the skeptics couldn't argue away. The body of that Neanderthal, known as Shanidar I, belonged to a man who had suffered devastating injuries. A crushed eye socket, a withered arm, badly damaged legs. He had survived those injuries for years. He could not have survived alone. Someone fed him. Someone kept him alive. Long before the burial, there was care. That is not an animal behavior. That is something else entirely. Your brain is wired to respond to death in a specific way. Psychologist Robert Kastenbaum, who spent decades studying death anxiety, found that humans are unique in their awareness of their own mortality. You don't just observe death, you anticipate it. You know, somewhere behind your daily routines and your coffee orders and your commute, that one day you will stop. No other animal appears to carry that knowledge the way you do. And that awareness, Kastenbaum argued, is the engine behind almost every ritual, religion, and monument your species has ever built. But ritual didn't begin with monuments. It began with something much quieter. Think about what you actually do when someone dies today. You gather, you don't scatter, you bring food, you tell stories, you repeat the same words in the same order at specific moments, even if you don't fully understand why. You do these things because they work, because they give the chaos of loss a container. And your ancestors, tens of thousands of years before any written language existed, figured out the same thing. The oldest confirmed burial site is roughly 130,000 years old. Found in a cave called Eskul in present-day Israel, the bodies were intentionally placed with objects beside them. A boar's jaw, a shell, grave goods. Meaning someone believed, or hoped, or simply needed to believe, that those objects mattered beyond death. That the person going into the ground might still need something on the other side. That instinct, that reaching gesture, never left you. Anthropologist Barbara King, in her book Evolving God, argues that empathy is the root of all human religious behavior. Before theology, before doctrine, before any organized system of belief, there was the felt sense of loss when someone known to you disappeared from the world. King traced this behavior back even further than human graves, finding evidence of what she calls grief responses in great apes who carry their dead infants for days, sometimes weeks, refusing to leave them. The behavior is not identical to human grief, but the shape of it is recognizable. Something in you already knows this. You have felt it. The specific practices varied wildly across cultures and across time. Some ancient peoples burned their dead. Others placed them in trees. Some mummified them. Some left them in towers open to the sky, allowing birds to return the body to the air. The Toraja people of Indonesia continue even today a practice of keeping their dead relatives at home for weeks or months, treating the body as still present, still part of the household, until a proper funeral can be arranged. The Famadihana ritual in Madagascar involves families periodically exhuming the bones of their ancestors, rewrapping them in fresh cloth, dancing with them, sharing news, then returning them to the tomb. What looks strange to an outside eye is, from the inside, a conversation with someone you love? Because that is what all of it is, at its core. Philosopher Thomas Lynch, who spent his career as a funeral director and writer, put it plainly. The dead don't need funerals. The living do. Every ritual, every gesture, every flower placed on every grave is not for the person who has gone. It is for the person left standing. It is the human brain's way of processing an event it was never entirely designed to process. You know death is coming. You know it is final. And yet some part of your mind cannot fully accept either of those facts without help. The ritual is the help. Anthropological records show that grief untethered from ritual tends to be more prolonged, more destabilizing. Researcher Paul Rosenblatt studied grief across 78 different cultures and found that while the expression of grief varied enormously, the presence of structured mourning practices correlated consistently with recovery. Not because the rituals changed the fact of death. They didn't. But because ritual gives grief a shape, a beginning, a middle, an end. A script for a moment that otherwise has none. Your ancestors understood this without any of the studies. They understood it the way you understand breathing, not as a theory, as a need. The fire may have come before the burial. Evidence from the Wonderwerk cave in South Africa pushes controlled fire use back roughly 1 million years. And fire, at night, around a body, changes everything. It keeps predators away. It gives the living a place to gather. It turns the act of watching over the dead into a ceremony. Some researchers believe the practice of sitting with the body through the night, keeping vigil, is one of the oldest human rituals on Earth. You probably know it by another name, awake. The word itself is ancient. It means to watch, to stay awake, to refuse to leave. Consider what that means. For 1 million years or more, across every continent, across every version of what it meant to be human, some version of you sat beside someone they loved and simply refused to look away. That impulse didn't come from a book. It did not come from a priest or a culture or a set of instructions. It came from inside you, from the same place grief comes from the same place love comes from. It was never about the body. It was always about the bond. And so tonight, or someday, when that moment comes, when you find yourself sitting beside someone who is gone, not knowing what to do with your hands, not knowing what to say, surrounded by that impossible silence, understand this. You are not failing. You are not lost. You are doing the oldest thing your species knows how to do. You are staying. You are watching. You are refusing to look away. And for 100,000 years before you, someone just like you did exactly the same thing.